We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Lara.
I'm Kayla.
Today we have three of us in the crime lab. Crime Clueless Pod Lab.
I like Lara's new name for us, the Crime Lab.
Me too. It's perfect. We're missing Krista for this episode. I'm sure she'll be excited to listen to it.
It'll be all new for her.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
She'll still be clueless.
Yes. You guys want to just jump right in?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right.
Can't wait.
Picture this, a crisp September day in the breathtaking Rocky Mountain National Park. Golden aspens flicker in the breeze, jagged peaks stretch towards the sky, and a couple, a successful ophthalmologist and her doting husband, trek along a scenic trail, soaking in the beauty of their wedding anniversary. Romantic, right? The kind of day you'd expect to see in a heartwarming Hallmark movie, complete with soft music and an unnecessary number of slow motion glances.
So picturesque.
So picturesque. That couple was Toni and Harold Henthorn. By all accounts, they were a picture-perfect duo. Toni, a well-respected doctor with a kind heart, and Harold, a devoted husband who planned every detail of their special day. And when I say every detail, I mean it.
Uh-oh.
Harold wasn't the type to leave things to chance. From their dinner reservation to the precise moment they'd hit the trail, this guy had it all mapped out. Here's the thing about perfect plans. Sometimes they take a sharp turn. At some point during their hike, the couple found themselves in a secluded area near Deer Mountain, far from the main trail. No crowds, no railings, just sheer drops, but spectacular views.
I don't like that.
No, seems ominous.
And then, you guys don't have to wait long, something happened. A call comes into 911. The connection is bad, crackling in and out, but the message is clear. A woman has fallen off a cliff. A desperate husband is on the other end, saying he's trying to reach his wife, but it's not looking good. Park rangers race to the scene, hoping against hope that this is some kind of survivable accident. When they arrive, they find Toni's body lying 140 feet below, unmoving.
What a fall. That's so sad.
Awful.
It's like one of my fears.
Yeah, don't go hiking.
Every time I've gone to the Grand Canyon, I look over. I'm like, no, thank you. I'm good.
It's wild how much of the Grand Canyon you can just look over into.
Yeah, we've gone down. I mean, I've maybe gone a little further than maybe I should, but it was fine. It was fine. But
you're still here.
On the edge of those, it's just steep down. It's terrifying.
Yeah, and when you're there with a little kid, it's so scary.
No.
I remember when we went growing up, I was so scared that Kayla and Krista were going to fall off.
Mm-hmm.
I was terrified.
Oh, yeah. I was
I
scared I was going to fall off, too.
Yeah. I was more scared for you guys. I'm like, they're little. They're going to fall into the Grand Canyon.
I appreciate your concern.
I was concerned.
Thank you.
I mean, I think I was 13, so you guys were younger. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could have been younger. I don't remember.
It always, I'm like,
Sure,
I was going to trip
older.
and fall.
Yeah.
I thought I was older. I thought you were 16.
I thought you were a little bit older too.
Oh, I have no idea.
I think I was 13.
Oh, okay.
So I would have been 8.
Yeah. You would have tripped and fallen. I was sure of it.
Well, it's a good thing you were watching me.
I was.
Thank you.
Oh.
I think I was so scared. I remember being sick on that trip. I think it was because I was so scared someone's going to fall in the Grand Canyon.
The main thing I remember about that trip is funny. I had just gotten a new coat. It was blue.
Oh.
That's what I remember the most.
Don't tell mom and dad. Sorry, mom and dad.
Okay, I remember that trip, but that's the main thing that sticks out to me is I was just so excited about my new coat.
Caleb's like, I don't even care about the Grand Canyon. This coat is way cool.
It's way cool.
Thanks for the fun adventures, mom and dad.
Yes, thank you.
I loved it. Should have brought that up.
Oh, no, I like it because you were young. It's hard to remember all the details when you're young.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should probably get back to Toni.
Okay, so back to Toni.
Sorry.
It appears that on what should have been the most romantic day for her and Harold, Toni had fallen to her death. a tragic accident, or something else? And oh boy, we're not leaving it at that. When rangers arrived at the scene, Harold was exactly what you'd expect from a grieving husband. He was distraught, shaken, barely able to form words. His wife had just fallen to her death after all. According to Harold, it all happened so fast. He told authorities that they had stepped off the trail to enjoy a private moment together, taken the views, snapped some romantic photos. Toni, he said, had been just ahead of him, walking near the edge when she suddenly lost her balance and slipped. Before he could react, before he could even reach for her, she was gone. Tragic, horrifying, a freak accident.
So sad.
It's so sad. And yet, something wasn't sitting quite right. See, there's a big difference between someone being devastated and someone trying maybe a little too hard to be devastated. And Harold, well, let's just say his performance had some questionable acting choices. For starters, he was strangely calm. He cried, sure, but in a way that felt a little too controlled. And when rangers started asking him to walk them through what happened, he had a way of over-explaining things. Like he was trying to get ahead of any suspicions before they even had a chance to form. And then there was the timeline. Harold had called 911, which was the right thing to do, except according to phone records, it looks like he waited over 45 minutes before making the call.
What?
45 minutes.
Yeah, that's sketchy.
Yeah. Now, I don't know about you, but if my spouse just plummeted off a cliff, or my best friend, or my sister, my first instinct wouldn't be, let's just marinate this for a moment.
That's
Or
chill.
see if I can get him. Like, that's my
Yeah.
thought. Like, maybe
He did go down
He's-
to where she was. He was
Yeah.
like making his way down there, but
wouldn't you call them first? You would think she would
Yes.
need some medical help.
Immediately.
yes, exactly.
Call
One of
while
you
you're
fell.
walking down.
I would call immediately.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep.
I
Yes.
got you.
Me too. I call immediately.
Jenna didn't say she would.
Jenna didn't.
No, I would. Of course I would. I just said I wouldn't wait 45 minutes. And I even threw you into that. My spouse, a friend, my sister. Park rangers thought maybe Harold's in shock. Maybe this really is just a terrible accident. They weren't sure yet. They took Harold's statement and arranged for Toni's body to be transported. And because, again, this was a horrible tragedy, they initially treated it as just that. A tragic misstep, a terrible fall, a husband now left alone. But then, as they began retracing Harold and Toni's hike, one of the rangers noted something odd, something that didn't seem like an accident at all. And that, my friends, is what we call a cliffhanger. Kidding.
End of episode 1.
This is a 7-part series. No, just kidding. Another strange thing that park rangers had noticed when Harold did call 911, he said he'd been doing CPR the whole time, but her lipstick wasn't even smudged. And he also failed to mention that her head was bleeding. Just that she fell, needs help. So,
I guess maybe if he didn't know to do rescue breaths with CPR, that could.
I guess.
Isn't that the main part of CPR, though?
Well, chest compressions.
Well, yeah.
And
but also
you-
breathing.
Yeah, but you can do just chest compressions because they say sometimes that moves like your lungs enough to move air
Mm.
with chest compressions.
Maybe if you're not sure, do both, though.
Always you should do both.
Okay.
Thank you, nurse.
30 to 2, 30 chest compressions, 2 breaths.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good to know. Because they weren't quite sure what happened, at first there wasn't an official investigation. Toni's death was technically still considered a tragic accident. And Harold, he was just a grieving husband who had lost the love of his life in an unspeakable tragedy. But you know who wasn't totally convinced? The park rangers. See, while Harold was busy doing his best devastated impression, the rangers were doing what they do best, observing the scene. And something felt off. For starters, the area where Toni fell, it wasn't part of the main trail, like not even kind of close. They weren't just a few steps off the path. They were way out in the rugged, unmarked terrain of Deer Mountain, where the drops are sheer and the footing was sketchy at best. So the first question became, why were they even here? According to Harold, he and Toni had wandered off the beaten path for a more private, scenic moment together, which, sure, sounds sweet, very anniversary-esque.
Except for not into sheer cliffs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If you're going to step off the
view.
path,
The view.
if you're going to step off the path, make sure it's a solid landing space.
Nah. Where's your sense of adventure?
But see, Toni would agree with Laura because she was not exactly the risk-taking type. She was highly intelligent. She was an accomplished doctor, a woman who literally worked with eyes for a living. The idea that she would casually stroll right up to the edge of a sheer cliff on rocky, uneven terrain just didn't fit with what people knew about her. And then there was the picnic theory, because apparently, according to Harold, the whole reason they were off trail to begin with was that he had picked the perfect secluded spot for an anniversary picnic. Except there was no picnic. Like zero evidence of any food, blanket, or supplies. No romantic setup, no half-eaten sandwiches, no wine glasses waiting for a toast, nothing. Which meant one of two things. Harold had a very different idea of what a picnic should be, or the picnic excuse was total garbage. You like that one?
I do.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I like it. I like that you like it. And then there was the real kicker, a pair of footprints right at the edge of the cliff. One set belonged to Toni, the other Harold's. But here's the weird part. Toni's only led in one direction, right to the drop-off. No signs of pacing, no hesitation marks, just a straight path to the edge, as if maybe she hadn't walked there willingly. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was when investigators decided that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the kind of anniversary surprise Harold wanted people to believe.
Ominous.
Losing a spouse in a freak accident is unimaginable. Most people in Harold's position would be shattered, barely able to function, let alone plan an elaborate funeral production. But Harold had other ideas. From the moment Toni's death was ruled an accident, Harold shifted into full-on event coordinator mode. And oh boy, did he have some choices in store. First, there was the guest list. Toni's own parents and brother, the people who raised her, loved her, and had known her far longer than Harold ever did, they were not exactly feeling welcome at this funeral. He had assigned seats, and he had one side for his family and friends, and a small little section for hers.
That's weird.
Yeah. Harold deliberately tried to exclude her family from attending.
Sad.
No invitation, no call, nothing. You might think that Harold just was grieving and forgot to invite people. Not quite. Harold did invite people, many of his own friends, a few of Toni's acquaintances, and inexplicably, his friends who really didn't know Toni at all. Then came the eulogy, or as I like to call it, Harold's one-man show, a tribute to myself. Instead of talking about Toni's life, her accomplishments, the people she loved, the people that loved her, Harold spent an alarming amount of time talking about himself. And just when guests thought it couldn't get any weirder or uncomfortable, he rolled out the slideshow. Dear Lord, the slideshow.
Uh-oh.
Now, a tribute video at a funeral isn't unusual. People do it all the time. But this was not that. Harold's slideshow was a 30-minute fever dream featuring photo after photo of mostly himself. Yeah. He had collected over 80 photos and sent them to a woman to make into a slideshow. And
a 30-minute video.
Uh-huh. Yep. They had been married for 10 years.
Mm.
And there was not a single picture from before he met Toni. Like, not one. There were a lot of him, and they had a daughter. She was 7 at the time.
Oh,
Lots of them. If Toni was in the picture, she was off to the side while the two of them were in the picture.
That's so weird.
It's so weird. It was as if he had mistaken his wife's funeral for a retirement party honoring himself. Guests were stunned. People sat there uncomfortable, confused, and in some cases, suspicious. Because if you really loved someone, if their sudden tragic death had ripped your soul apart, this is not how you'd behave. And as if this wasn't bad enough, Harold had one more little surprise up his sleeve. Before we get to that, let's talk about who Toni was and what should have been included in the celebration of life for a woman deeply loved by many. Before her life was cut tragically short, Toni Henthorn was so much more than just Harold's wife. She was a brilliant doctor. She was a beloved daughter, sister, friend, mother, and above all, that devoted mom to her young daughter, Haley. Toni's story didn't begin on that Rocky Mountain Trail. It began in Mississippi, where she grew up surrounded by love, faith, and family. From a young age, Toni was sharp, driven, and incredibly compassionate. She had a natural gift for helping people. And when she set her sights on becoming a doctor, she didn't just follow through, she excelled. Toni earned her medical degree and built a successful career as an ophthalmologist, helping patients restore and protect their vision. She was the kind of person who would go the extra mile for anyone, always putting others first, a trait that, tragically, may have made her blind to the dangers in her own life. In her 30s, while working hard in her medical career, Toni met a man who seemed perfect on paper, a man named Harold Henthorn. Harold and Toni met in the early 2000s. At first, he was charming, thoughtful, attentive, a man who planned elaborate surprises, always knew the right things to say, and seemed completely devoted to Toni. Her family, they were skeptical. Something about Harold just seemed off. But Toni, she was in love. To her, Harold was the perfect match, a faith-driven, seemingly successful man who adored her. And when they married in 2000, Toni's friends and family hoped that, despite their unease, she had found her happily ever after. Then, in 2005, her greatest joy arrived, their daughter, Haley. If there was one thing that mattered above all else to Toni, it was her daughter. She was the kind of mom who did everything with love, attending school events, reading bedtime stories, and making sure Haley always knew she was cherished. She balanced being a successful doctor and a hands-on devoted mom, never letting her demanding career get in the way of giving her daughter a happy, stable childhood. But as Toni's life might have seemed picture perfect from the outside, there were cracks forming behind the scenes. Harold had slowly taken control over her schedules, her friendships, even her finances. And over time, her light seemed to dim. Her friends noticed, her family noticed, and in the last months of her life, Toni started to notice too. She confided in close friends that Harold's behavior was making her uneasy. She didn't trust him completely. And, most hauntingly of all, she told them that if something ever happened to her, it wouldn't be an accident.
Oh.
Yeah. And sadly, she was right. When they got married, he had her move to Colorado, which she said she was happy about, but it was really far away from all of her family. And as the months went on, they would call her, and she would say she couldn't talk to them unless Harold was home and in the room.
What?
Like that amount of control over her.
Oh, I hate that.
I hate that too.
Was this at the beginning of their marriage, you said?
After they got married pretty quick, they moved to Colorado. And then he started.
Before she had her baby?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But what Harold didn't count on was that Toni's story wouldn't end with her murder, because she wasn't just another name in a tragic case. She was a brilliant doctor, a loving mother, and a woman whose life was stolen far too soon. All right, so back to that surprise. Just a few months before her death, Toni's life insurance policy had been updated. A $4.7 million payout with Harold as the sole beneficiary.
That's so much.
Yep.
A lot.
Life insurance itself, of course, isn't suspicious. Plenty of people update policies over time. But Harold was the one who handled it. And Toni, her own friends and family had no idea she had a policy that large. Weird. Then came the second will issue. Shortly after her death, Harold produced a handwritten will that Toni had supposedly written, leaving everything to him. When experts looked at it, it screamed forgery. Like, imagine a fifth grader trying to fake a sick note. That level of believable. And suddenly, the whole grieving husband act, it wasn't looking so convincing anymore. Because at this point, Harold didn't seem like a widower in mourning. He seemed like a man cashing in. If you were to ask Toni's friends and family about Harold before her tragic fall, their responses would probably be a mix of polite skepticism and full-blown side-eye. Because while Harold looked the part of the devoted husband, successful, thoughtful, seemingly doting, there was something about him that just didn't sit right. For starters, what did Harold actually do for a living? Toni was a respected ophthalmologist, hardworking, successful. Harold, meanwhile, was allegedly some kind of fundraising consultant. What
Is that
exactly?
a thing?
Great question. No one seemed to know. The guess is he said he did fundraising from his basement. He said he had 90 people working for him.
Fundraising for what?
Ants? Him and his team of ants in the basement?
No one knew exactly.
What?
I don't know.
Despite being married for 12 years, Toni's family and friends realized that they'd never actually seen Harold working. No real schedule, they'd never met a colleague, no actual evidence of employment. And yet somehow he always had money that came entirely from Toni's income, her parents, and their, air quotes, shared assets. So while Toni was out, saving people's vision, Harold was mysteriously busy doing vague business things. Suspicious, maybe, but it gets worse. It wasn't just that Harold was strangely unemployed, it was that he was alarmingly controlling. Toni's friends noticed that she was always checking in with him, as if she had to constantly update her whereabouts. If she went out to lunch, Harold needed to know exactly who she was with. If she made plans, he had to be consulted first. If she wanted to visit her family, well, good luck with that. In fact, Harold worked hard to keep Toni isolated.
Maybe that was his job.
Mm-hmm.
Total control.
Ew.
Sounds like
Yeah.
a prick.
Yep.
Especially that he doesn't contribute to the family.
Right?
He's just sitting at home with his army,
Making the rules.
making the rules, taking her money, and controlling her.
It's awful.
Ugh.
It's awful.
So terrible.
I don't like that.
Nope.
Her parents lived many states away, and they noticed that she visited them less and less over the years. And when they did talk to her, she was always exhausted, always stressed, like she was carrying some invisible weight on her shoulders. After Toni's death, investigators found some of her old personal journals, and inside she had written about her fears, her unease, the fact that she didn't trust Harold. She even wrote that if something ever happened to her, it wouldn't be an accident.
That's such a scary way to feel.
Yeah,
Well,
that gives
especially
you
that
chills.
she's writing it down. She's telling her friends like
Mhm.
she knew something was going to happen.
Right.
I wish she would have left him.
I know, me too.
It's so
But then
sad.
you wonder that level of control.
Mm-hmm. She probably
And you've
couldn't.
got the 7-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
It's so awful. That note definitely sends chills down my spine.
Yeah.
And if your spouse ever writes something down like that, that's not a good sign. By now, Toni's family and friends were convinced this was no accident, but even they weren't prepared for what investigators were about to find out next. Because when authorities decided to dig into Harold's past, they discovered a shocking bombshell. This wasn't the first time Harold had been married. This wasn't the first time his wife had died in a freak accident.
What?
Well, I didn't see that coming.
Yep.
No.
Just when investigators thought Harold couldn't get any more suspicious, they made a shocking discovery. This wasn't the first time he had been a grieving husband. Because before Toni, there was Lynn. And before Toni's tragic fall, there was another freak accident. Let's rewind to 1995. Harold was married to his first wife, Lynn, a kind, hardworking woman who, just like Toni, came from a loving, close-knit family. By all accounts, she was smart, happy, and completely unaware that she had married a giant red flag. And then one night, everything changed. Harold and Lynn were driving down a remote road when, according to Harold, they got a flat tire. Now, normally, a flat tire is annoying, not deadly, but according to Harold, while he was bravely trying to change it in the dark, the car slipped off the jack and crushed Lynn.
What?
That's horrifying.
Horrifying.
How does that happen?
It
Oh.
doesn't.
I will tell you.
Okay.
Yeah. At the time, though, they thought it was a completely random, totally freak accident. And Harold, he was, again, the only witness. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
At the time, authorities had no reason to doubt him. Lynn's death was ruled an accident, and Harold went on to collect a hefty life insurance payout.
Oh, so that's how he contributed.
Well, sort of. One that shockingly had been upped shortly before Lynn died.
A pattern emerges.
Yeah. But here's the thing. When investigators reopened Lynn's case, they started finding some serious problems with Harold's version of events. For starters, the car, it didn't have a flat tire at all. Not before the accident, not after, not ever. And he claimed he made life-saving efforts. But it turns out some people had saw him on the side of the road and pulled over to try to help after the car had slipped off the jack. And when they tried to give CPR to Lynn, Harold lost it. He told them not to touch her. He would sue them because if she died, it would be their fault.
What?
And he'd rather just wait for paramedics to get there.
Wow.
The people at the scene were blown away.
Yeah.
They couldn't figure out why he wouldn't let them help.
You think he would stick around then and wait for authorities to get there?
They did.
And they didn't.
No.
Wow.
The 911 dispatcher had asked them to do it. It's almost like, stay with me here. He didn't want to save her at all.
Yeah.
So he didn't have a normal car jack in his car. He had a random one for like a boat or an RV or something that didn't fit. So he claimed that because it was wrong, and he said that Lynn was holding these bolts for him to change it. She dropped them. So she went under the car to get them, and it slipped off the jack right then and crushed her. He said he had tossed the tire in the back, not knowing, right as she went under.
Seems fake.
And you're right, it wouldn't do that.
No.
And I'll tell you why in a bit. Here's the creepiest part, though. Lynn's body was found with a perfectly folded quilt underneath her, as if someone had taken the time to place a blanket under her body before the car landed on top of her.
What?
It makes no sense.
So, was she already dead? And then he just used the car crushing her to try and...
Or did he want her to climb under there for something? And so but it was dirty, so they put a blanket down?
Yeah.
Is that what he's saying?
I'm not sure which one.
Maybe that's how he got her to
the second one.
climb under the car.
Yeah.
Here, I'll put a blanket out for you.
Yes, exactly. That's the feeling I get from it, but it's weird.
That is really weird.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it.
No.
Never go under the car, guys.
No, never go under the car.
No.
And it's like, how do you get her to drop it? Did he drop them and then he lied and said she dropped them?
Oh, I'm sure.
He probably threw him under the car.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he was probably like, hey, can you grab these while I put this in the trunk?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't worry,
sorry.
it's
Threw
fine.
him under the car.
Yeah. All right, so let's take stock here. We have two wives, two tragic accidents with air quotes.
quote unquote.
And 2 massive life insurance payouts. And 1 man who just so happened to be the only witness each time. At this point, investigators knew Toni's death wasn't just suspicious, it was part of a pattern. They were determined that this time Harold wasn't going to get away with it. By this point, investigators had serious doubts about Harold's version of events, but rather than just assuming he was lying, they decided to do something beautifully scientific. They recreated the Jeep scene because Harold's story, if you recall, was that he and Lynn had been driving along a deserted road at night. They got the flat tire, which we know is a lie. He pulled over, got out the jack that was the wrong jack, and started lifting the car. And then Lynn, for some reason, was under the Jeep when it suddenly slipped off the jack and crushed her. Now, the last part, that is a real head scratcher because if you've ever changed a tire before, you probably know that the person fixing the tire is beside the car, not under it. And a jack slipping might cause a sudden drop, but the car doesn't launch forward like a horror movie. It just comes down in the same spot. So how exactly did the Jeep fall in such a way that Lynn ended up directly underneath it? That's what investigators wanted to know.
And me.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
I'm like trying to figure this out in my head. And I don't know. I've changed tires enough that even as a Jeep, it would still have enough support from the other 3. Like it would just fall down like a little bit in the back, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like it would crush some. I was thinking like a smaller car too, because that if it's lower to the ground, maybe if she was right there, but a Jeep
Cherokee.
Yeah. Okay.
So he was using a jack that was too small and too weak to be holding up this kind of vehicle in the first place. A standard scissor jack, the kind that comes with most cars, isn't meant to support a heavy Jeep Cherokee on uneven ground. It's meant for quick tire changes, not full-on suspension. There's no realistic way that a Jeep could have been balanced on that jack long enough for Harold's story to even make sense.
It rolled over?
Like the place that didn't have the tire?
Or is he saying that it rolled backwards, like she was under there and it rolled back over her?
Or like rolled forwards. Yeah.
I'm having a hard time.
There's no way to like it doesn't make sense.
No.
There's no way to picture that.
Okay.
And, the car wasn't on a steep hill, but someone would have had to give it a push. Otherwise, the vehicle doesn't just launch itself forward. Lynn didn't just accidentally end up under that car.
Well, and if you had it in park anyway, it's not going to roll.
Yeah. Then investigators thought about the other bizarre detail, the folded quilt. Lynn was found lying on a quilt, perfectly placed beneath her back, as if someone had laid her down gently before the Jeep fell.
Oh, yeah. She was dead before he put her under there.
The quilt, And then, I guess, pushed the car on top of her. Because I guess in that scenario, he could try to do it as many times as he wanted.
Yeah, if she was already dead and he wanted it to look that way.
Right.
So he's creating injuries to mask how she died.
Right. I think so. Yeah.
So he was saying the car ran her over?
She was, so it was the front passenger side tire.
Okay.
She was under, her head more under the car. And then, the back of her neck, her back was under where that wheel would go
rim.
Back on.
Okay.
The rotor.
Okay.
The rotor.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So if they had dropped the bolts that they said, and then she just went right under that to get them.
Okay. Not sure why you would do that, but
It seems so dangerous. I won't even go under my car
for anything.
I'll move it to get whatever I dropped underneath it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I get you can't when it's up on the jack, but
true.
At least finish it, if you only dropped 1 or 2.
Put the tire on, right.
Yeah.
And put it down so it's safer to go under.
And then grab them. Yeah.
And then you could finish putting the tire on.
Grab a tree branch and try to pull it out.
So it's like she reached like she was laying down and went right under where you would put the wheel on, and they're saying that fell on her.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Seems
I see.
convenient for Harold.
It seems convenient for him and also wrong, right?
Yeah. I don't know how it just falls off of the.
No.
Yeah. So investigators wanted to test this. They took a Jeep that was just like Harold's. They lifted it using the same type of jack that he had used. And then going through the records they were going through this in 2013. And this had happened in 1995. Going through, they set everything up just like what he said happened.
They went back to the same place even? Do you know?
I don't know that it was the exact same place.
Oh, okay. Just so that if they could test like the terrain and stuff.
Right. I think it was pretty flat where he was. And so they went somewhere that was also flat. They put a dummy under exactly where she was found. First, they tried to make it slip by throwing the tire in the back like Harold said. And it's a big, heavy tire. You're not going to just toss it in. You've got to lift it carefully, roll it up the back.
Unless he's seriously jacked.
He's not. He's not.
No.
He's old and he doesn't change tires and he doesn't lift weights.
It's not Lou Ferrigno.
No. Which was hard. It's heavy. And nothing happened. So they put the tire in again. Nothing happened. So they're pushing on the Jeep. They cannot make it fall like he said it would. So now they're trying to find how this could have even fallen. His story is not adding up. It couldn't have happened the way he said. So one of the investigators started to bring down the jack. And without the tire, the car tipped. Harold could have done it that way on purpose if she was still alive.
Yeah.
Right. But not the way that he claims that it happened.
Well, and that maybe makes sense why there was a blanket there if he put it down for her to crawl under the car. But
right.
If it was dirty and I don't know, I don't like getting down in the dirt, but
I mean, I have a blanket in the back of my car for that reason.
Yeah, if you're kneeling on the ground changing a tire, maybe they put the blanket down and she laid on that to reach underneath. If that is what happened, if she wasn't placed there,
right?
But who knows?
Well, and they also noted that there was no dirt or any kind of debris under her fingernails. So if you're in the dirt off the side of the road in the dark,
looking for something,
yeah, you would have something, right?
Like on your fingers, at least, even if she was just feeling around.
And that time doesn't make sense because, I mean, in the time that he's trying to move the tire from by where they were to put it in the back, she had to have been searching for a little while at least. So, yeah, there would be debris and stuff.
Right. I mean, he said she dropped him. He went around, put the tire in the back. She got down to reach for it.
He would have been back in time.
Right. And he threw the tire in and gone.
Mm.
He could have, I think one of you said this when we were watching the recreation together. He could have said he was helping her look while she's down, gone on the other side where the jack was, and lowered it on top of her.
Yeah.
And that amount of time makes sense if she was still alive.
If they were both getting down there at the same time to supposedly look for the bolts under the car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She might not have noticed that he didn't get down quite as fast. They did say he had a bad back.
Mm.
That's so sad.
Well, and to think to just bend down and look under the car or, get down on your knees and look is different timing than trying to crawl underneath the rotor.
Well, and
get under there.
Right.
What you just said, he claimed he had a bad back. How's he throwing a tire into the back of the Jeep?
A big, heavy Jeep Cherokee tire?
No.
You're going to be rolling that up into the back or...
Yeah, it would be a
two-person job, maybe?
Yeah.
If he has a bad back and can't lift it.
Yeah.
And they're saying that tire they found after they found it wasn't ever flat.
That's what they say, yeah.
Mm.
Well,
and
dumb on his part. He should have at least slashed it.
Stabbed it with a nail or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even then, they can tell if it's been driven on flat or not.
Yeah, that's true too.
So maybe he did do that, but it did say it wasn't flat. So I don't know.
Didn't she notice that?
I was
She goes
wondering
out there?
that too, unless he was taking it off and then he was like, oh, come hold these. Or he was like, oh, I dropped these. Come and help
It was
me.
on the passenger side, so she wouldn't have been able to stay in the car anyway. She would have gotten out of the car first and seen it.
Yeah.
It
Unless
was dark.
and he just went around to change it.
But passenger side, she would have had to have gone out of the car and taken a look at it.
I would
You would think.
so.
Even in the dark, you'd be able to see if it was flat or not.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he said it's not completely flat, it's going flat.
Like I could feel it in the steering wheel or...
Yeah, maybe he said like it feels like it's going flat.
Okay, so one time when I had my Jeep, this was so scary. I was driving and I went to get on the freeway and my steering wheel just started like shaking back and forth. And one of my tires like had loose bolts and like came off.
Oh, that's scary.
It was terrifying. So I wonder if he said something like that or he did something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I had to have it towed. It was the worst. Yeah. Another thing is investigators went back and followed up with somebody who had been there at the time. And they said, do you remember anything? You know, it's been 18 years. And this lady said, oh, I remember. I still have nightmares about that night. It was terrible. He was in the middle trying to like flag down people with a flare. So they pulled over to help. And he said his wife, the Jeep fell on her. They're trying to question him. He's not making sense. They're able to get her out from underneath that. I'm guessing they just lifted the jack back up.
Yeah.
They start to do CPR and he screamed at them to stop. Don't do that. Don't
touch her.
Don't touch her. She's going, why? And then they heard sirens coming. So I'm guessing he didn't call anybody. Maybe one of them had a cell phone and called when they saw him.
Maybe.
It doesn't seem like he made the call.
Yeah, because if he has a flare to try and like track someone down, how would they have? How would the sirens have gotten there so quick though?
I mean, it could have been a long time, or they could have been close by.
Well, because if they stopped and saw it was an accident and someone called 911 and then they got her out from under the car and then they were doing CPR. So it was a little bit of time, it seems like.
Yeah.
Because they had to figure out how to get her out.
And who knows how long he waited before trying to like flag someone down.
Yeah. But maybe when they pulled over and they saw what the scene was, maybe someone in the car called 911
without asking or
this is an emergency.
The lady said that he seemed panicked that
there were
coming,
sirens
instead of relieved.
Yeah. And maybe there was a cop nearby already. So when they called it in, maybe someone was close by already.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah. At this point, investigators know that they're not just dealing with this weird story, even though it is weird, they're dealing with something that's impossible because they were not able to recreate it. It makes no sense.
The other thing I was thinking too, if he was there for a while, maybe people were driving by and saw and
that's true.
Called and didn't stop, or
right, because they don't know who this guy is. Maybe he's
or maybe they're passing as they see it. You know, I don't know, but maybe someone drove by and saw it and didn't stop, or saw that they had an accident, even that they had a flat tire and they were stopped on the side of the road. Maybe they called 911.
Yeah,
because it is dark and it's
yeah,
that could have been too.
I mean, if I were driving alone, I would call 911, but I wouldn't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If someone had a flat tire,
I
wouldn't be able to help them anyway, probably. I've helped Brooks change tires, but I've never
really
done it myself.
I'll teach you. It's easy.
I know the basics.
Your car doesn't have a spare in it, though. So
I know.
you can't change it.
I'll have to just call someone anyway.
Yeah.
Let's have a class just in case.
Yeah, that's true. Rental cars.
I'll teach you how to change a tire, Laura.
Yes.
I know the basics. I've just never done it myself.
We'll make sure that you can do it.
It's easy.
Yeah, you got this.
Just got to do it in the right steps.
And don't get under the car.
Don't reach underneath and
Lesson
lay on the
one.
ground underneath the... Okay.
Yeah, no.
No.
Okay.
So weird, awful, tragic, horrifying. But also, if Harold had lied about this, what else had he lied about?
Everything.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. Everything.
Sorry.
No. That literally was my next line. Spoiler alert.
Oh, okay.
So you nailed it.
I'm feeling bad for his daughter.
Me too.
Oh,
She
yeah.
lost her mom and her dad's a crazy person.
Yeah.
I'd be scared for her too.
So her dad came home and said, Mom can't come be with us anymore, or something to that effect. He didn't say that she died, but he kind of left it open to where she wasn't ever entirely sure if she could come back.
That's weird.
Like she won't gain consciousness, or like he said it in the weirdest way. I wish I had written it down, but yeah, he had just said she's not coming.
Can't come back.
Right. And then he would get mad at her if she acted sad.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's awful.
Yeah,
That's so terrible.
it's really sad. And he was trying to keep her away from Toni's friends and family. And as much as they disliked Harold, they were really worried about Haley.
Oh,
of
yeah.
course.
I was thinking that too. Maybe she
knows?
has some life.
I was going to say, who knows how
Insurance,
much life
too.
insurance.
Well, and
Mhm.
with how controlling he was with his wife, I mean, how controlling is he with his daughter?
Exactly. Very. She said once she eventually, got older and saw what other families were like, it wasn't until then that she realized how controlling and crazy he is.
So sad.
Mhm. At this point, Harold's lies are starting to unravel. His grieving act, not so convincing anymore. The tragic accidents don't line up with the stories he's told. And the money trail, that's looking real suspicious. Because as investigators keep digging, they found something that wasn't so shocking anymore. Harold had a financial pattern, and it wasn't hard work and smart investing. Both of Harold's wives had something very convenient in common. They were high earners. Lynn had a solid career. Toni was successful in hers. Harold, meanwhile, it would be generous to say that he was an independent businessman with vague goals and no actual job.
I wonder, did Toni know about his previous wife?
I'm not sure.
I'm curious about that.
Her family had no idea.
Because if he's saying, oh, yeah, I have all this money from being, fundraising consultant, maybe he has all that money in a
And-
separate account.
Yeah.
He's just kind of pulling over gradually.
I think that's what it was. Yeah. I don't think she knew that he had that insurance payout.
No, I don't think so either.
Mm-mm. While neither of his wives had ever seemed concerned about finances, Harold was obsessed with them. In both cases, also, Harold had made sure their life insurance payouts were massive. And, oh, would you look at that? He was always the sole beneficiary. A year before Toni's death is when her life insurance payout was adjusted to $4.7 million. Toni wasn't the one who handled this change. Harold was. Toni wasn't even fully aware of just how much money was on her life insurance policy. Harold was a man with a pattern, and now, thankfully, law enforcement was ready to do something about it. For years, Harold had controlled the narrative. He was the grieving husband, the man who had endured unimaginable loss, the poor soul who had been through not one, but two tragic accidents. But now, he was the prime suspect.
I said, good.
Good, yes. And the moment he realized the FBI was actively building a case against him, Harold did what any innocent person would do. Just kidding.
He ran.
He got weird as hell. Once he realized investigators were closing in, Harold started spiraling. He stopped talking to people, even longtime friends. He became paranoid, convinced he was being watched, and he started trying to cover his tracks. But fun fact, it's very hard to cover your tracks when you've been this suspicious for this long. And then, in what might be the most absurd act of self-preservation, Harold actually tried to convince people that he was the real victim here. Of what, you ask? Of an FBI conspiracy to ruin his life.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah. He began telling anyone who would listen that he was being unfairly targeted and that the government was out to get him, that investigators were twisting the truth, and that poor Harold was just a loving husband who had been through too much. But nobody was buying this.
Good.
Not law enforcement, not Toni's family, not even the people who had once defended him, because by now, this evidence is overwhelming. Investigators were convinced that Toni's death was no accident. But then, as they started digging more and talking to Toni's friends, colleagues, and people from Harold's past, they discovered something even more terrifying. The mountain fall that wasn't Harold's first attempt on Toni.
What?
It was just the one that worked.
Oh, jeez.
Sad.
Because before Toni tragically slipped off a cliff, Harold had allegedly tried at least one other time to make her death look like a freak accident. And the first clue, in 2011, some months before their hike, but after he had raised the life insurance policy, Harold had invited Toni on a different trip, this time a scenic hike in a remote part of Colorado.
Why would she want to hike with him again?
Oh, well, because he didn't try to push her off the hiking trail. He had a cabin that they went to stay at. At some point during their stay, he had her go and try to change this light bulb, and he decided it was a good time to start hauling huge beams of wood over the deck right where she was changing the light bulb. One landed on the back of her neck, which caused damage that she was still dealing with when they went on the hike. Toni asked somebody in the ambulance because she was still conscious. So she was like, call 911, and made him do it. And she's in the ambulance and he wasn't in there with her. She told the person attending to her, I'm not even sure what happened. I don't think it was an accident.
Oh, gosh.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is why she's telling people and writing in her diary that if something happens to me, it's not an accident.
Yeah. She would later tell friends and family she felt weird about it, and it was just too much of a coincidence to be a freak accident.
Why is he like hauling large beams around at a rented cabin?
I think it was his cabin.
Oh,
Or
it was
cabin.
their cabin?
Mm-hmm. And he was like doing backyard cleanup.
Okay.
But it was late.
Yeah. I thought you said that it caught fire. I
Oh.
tried to like burn her down.
No.
And they could get a insurance claim for that.
For the cabin.
The cabin.
Too. Both. 2 in 1. He's so awful.
That's terrible.
Harold played up exactly what he thought a loving husband should be. He acted shaken, emotional, so relieved that she was okay. And he did this so much that Toni eventually brushed it off. And then there was a second clue that investigators found that came directly from Toni herself. Not long before she died, Toni sent a text to a friend saying she was worried about her upcoming anniversary trip. She had told friends that Harold had planned everything down to the minute, but something felt off. In the message, Toni admitted that she didn't really want to go. In fact, she had considered faking a girls' trip to get out of it. Let that sit for a second. Toni didn't feel safe with her own husband. She wasn't looking forward to the trip, and she was considering lying to avoid going. The reason? She was afraid something would happen to her.
That makes me so sad for her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Really sad.
By now, investigators were certain that Harold had been planning on it, testing ways to make it look like an accident, bringing her to this dangerous location, setting up situations where she could fall. By the time investigators had all the pieces in place, Harold had gone from being this grieving husband to a walking, talking, premeditated murder case. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Let's take a look at what authorities had stacked up against him. Toni's fall made no sense. The footprint evidence on the cliff suggested she was pushed, not just walking. They found a picture on their camera that Toni had taken a picture of Harold in the exact same spot, probably minutes before she died. And so they think he had her take the picture and then was like, oh, it's so beautiful. Look at the background. Let me take one of you, before selfie sticks were a thing.
Mm.
And possibly as she was walking over to take that picture is when he pushed her.
Mm.
The picnic, Harold claimed they went off trail for a romantic picnic, but of course there was no blanket, no food, no sign of anything remotely picnicky. They found maps in Harold's car of the exact spot that he killed her with like a circle and an X for that spot.
So he had like gone and
they
looked for
found
it.
that he had been spending time where he was on business trips, actually going to this trail and trying to find the perfect, remote enough, dangerous enough location, and had it mapped out and still had the map in his car.
Oh, gosh.
So an evil genius.
An
Not
evil
genius.
idiot.
That was sarcasm.
Yes. Investigators were confused on why Harold didn't call for almost an hour, 45 minutes and more after Toni had fallen. Of course, the insane amount of life insurance. They found out about the previous attempt because there were medical records for that.
Mm-hmm.
Then his first wife's suspicious similar death, the tragic car accident. They found Toni's text messages, journal entries, and other things from Toni herself. So all of this was building that case. And investigators were allowed to bring in those other two incidences.
Good.
Yeah. Also, investigators learned that he had lied about when he got a text message and when he called 911. They also learned, like we said, he didn't say her head was bleeding or make it seem like it was nearly as bad as it was when he did eventually call for help.
He didn't want them to rush there.
Exactly. On November 6th, 2014, the FBI finally made their move. Picture this, Harold sitting in his home in Denver, still playing the grieving husband, still assuming he's going to get away with everything. And then federal agents show up at his door with an arrest warrant. And just like that, the act was over. They had been following him for a while, and they had made sure that he had this same routine every day where he would take Haley to school, then come home to quote unquote work. They made sure Haley wasn't home when they came to arrest him.
That's good.
Yes.
Poor girl.
I know. Harold was taken into federal custody, and the case was finally heading to trial. Now that Harold was behind bars, prosecutors were ready to take this to court. His murder trial began in 2015. Prosecutors felt that they had built a pretty strong case against him. However, you have no witnesses, you have no murder weapon. So you've got to hope that all the circumstantial, plus, the map with the X and the timestamps and the first wife, that everything comes together. Harold had no good way to explain why both of his wives had died in accidents and that both had benefited him financially. From the moment the trial started, Harold's legal strategy was basically deny, deny, deny. And when that doesn't work, deny more. His main argument, Toni's death was an unfortunate accident. He was a loving husband who had planned a beautiful anniversary trip. Prosecution was twisting things to make him look guilty. Normal stuff.
Normal innocent behavior.
Once the prosecution started laying out the evidence, it became painfully clear that Harold's version of events made zero sense. Harold tried to defend himself with what we talked about, but the prosecution was able to tear his story apart. Harold did what any innocent person would do. He just kept getting weirder and more dramatic. When former friends and family members testified against him, Harold sat stone-faced, barely reacting. When prosecutors presented the overwhelming evidence, he refused to take the stand because, to be honest, he had no good explanation for anything. When the jury finally got the case, it didn't take long for them to reach a decision. They deliberated for 10 hours, and on September 21st, 2015, they found Harold guilty of first-degree murder. When the verdict was read, Harold showed no emotion, but you know who did? Toni's family. Because after 3 years of unanswered questions, they felt like justice had finally been served. After his
With the trial, were they also bringing in his first wife, or was it just for Toni's murder?
They were just charging him for Toni's murder.
Okay.
And he did get life in prison without the possibility of parole. So I'm not sure if they're ever going to try Lynn's case.
Okay.
Just because by the time this one, he wasn't found guilty till 2015, so it'd been 20 years.
Yeah, I hope her Lynn's family that they got some closure with this as well.
I think so, because they did introduce it as he's done this before.
Yeah, this is a pattern of behavior.
Yes. Harold was sent to a maximum security federal prison where, shockingly to no one, he continues to maintain that he's innocent.
I'm glad that they caught him. He could have ended up being like a serial killer.
Yeah.
Who knows how many other wives he could have found and done this to.
Especially as he moves from city to city. He could have done it to Haley.
Yeah.
He actually tried to do it to Lynn, his first wife's sister. So she was getting a divorce. It was messy. They had a lot of communication back and forth, especially after Lynn died. She had 2 daughters and she was worried about taking care of them. And he was like, well, let's get you a life insurance policy and just make sure that they're covered in case anything happens. Oh, and I'll help you, get financially stable because I'm really good with money. She moved to Texas and he got really upset that she moved, which was a giant warning flag to her.
Yeah.
And right before he wanted her to move by him in Colorado, right before the life insurance policy, like they were finishing up, she was like, I don't want to do it. Then she found out that he had gone ahead with it anyways. And she suspects, and I don't know if she saw this or just thinks he was putting himself as the sole beneficiary.
Of course he was.
Yeah.
Wow.
There were other attempts that weren't even wives.
Yeah.
And those are just the ones we know of.
Yeah. Who knows what else could have happened?
Yeah, because he still claims he's innocent for these ones.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that someone realized that this wasn't an accident and relooked at the first wife and caught him.
Right. Some final thoughts on Harold's case. It's a story about ignoring red flags. I mean, Toni and Lynn both had friends and family who didn't trust Harold, but no one realized just how dangerous he was until it was too late. Financial manipulation. Harold was a classic scammer, always targeting successful, financially independent women from deeply religious backgrounds because he felt like he could control them more using that aspect, which we didn't really get into here, but it's just that's how he found Toni in the first place, was like on a Christian dating website. The importance of investigating accidents. If authorities hadn't taken a closer look at Toni's case, who knows who Harold would have taken out next. Thanks to Toni's friends, her family, and investigators who refused to accept the lazy explanation that it was an accident, Harold is now right where he belongs, in prison for life. He, like I said, got life without parole in a maximum security prison in Indiana. And it is actually one of the toughest prisons in the country.
Good.
And life behind bars hasn't been entirely glamorous. He doesn't like it. He has filed appeal after appeal. And we will link to those in our resources, and you can read those if you so please. Even though he's spent several years filing appeals and claiming he's innocent and, bad defense, whatever the things are, not a single court has bought his nonsense.
Good.
Yep. Haley was 7 when her mom died. After his arrest, she went to live with Toni's family in Mississippi. They've worked hard to give her a stable, loving home away from everything that her father did. They've kept her life as private as possible. She did do an interview with 2020, and she is beautiful and strong and brave, and she is going to college for, I think, like chemical engineering or something crazy. Like she seems crazy smart too.
Yeah.
And she has not talked to him again, saying she could forgive him, but she's not having a relationship with him.
Yeah.
Well, what do you guys think?
Very interesting. And we watched the recreation on the 2020 special, and we'll link that. So if you guys want to see how that first wife, that recreation, check that out on our blog too, because it's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's cool to see them do stuff like that.
It's just sad to hear, when looking back, all the signs her, she was telling her friends, and I'm sure people don't want to believe it's that bad, but it's hard to see a few cries for help there.
It is.
And I wish her family and friends would have, trusted their instincts that they didn't like him,
Yep.
But I mean, it's tough to know before something like this happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just got to be hard, I think, looking back.
I agree.
I feel bad. I'm glad that they didn't let it go, and I'm glad that they were able to figure out what happened with the first murder as well.
Me too.
To get closure for both of their families.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us in this episode. We truly appreciate you spending your time with us. And like we said, if you're interested in reading the court case or the appeals or looking at the 2020 episode or any of the other resources that we used, head over to our blog. You can find it linked on our website, crimeclueless.com, under the contributors section. If you get a minute, we'd love if you'd follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Just search for @CrimeClueless. If you have any true crime stories of your own, we'd love to hear them. We'd love to feature them on a future episode. You can email us, crimeclueless@gmail.com. And thank you again for listening. Remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murderers.